Welcome to the preview for Matchday number 3 in the MLSisback tournament group stage. Now, I'm going to do two parts in terms of this preview because there's 13 games that is happening in this last match day of the group stage in the tournament, and there is no way in the world I can do one video where I look at all 13 games. That is just way too much game for me to look at in a single video, and this video will be like 45 to 50 minutes long. Plus, since tonight we have the last two game of match day number 2 that takes place with all those teams in Group F. I don't want to do the preview for the last day to look at those Group F matchup because tonight's match, depending on how the resort will look, it can really change the compression of what's gonna happen in that Group F and how each of the team scenario to be moving on into the next round of the MLSisback tournament. So, with that being said, let us actually begin. And we begin with the first game between the Chicago Fire versus the San Jose Earthquakes. This game kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Chicago, of course, won 2-1 against Seattle in the last game, while the Quakes won that thriller of a game against the Whitecaps by coming back from 3-1 down and won 4-3 against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky, and that this is why when I saw Dallas and Nashville, of course, decided to withdraw from this tournament, and then I also found out that Vancouver versus Chicago match is going to be literally on the last day of the group stage in the MLSisback tournament. This can get very tricky in terms of how you look at Group B, and that game can really change how Group B standing is going to be, and that there could be a situation where all of these teams, they're going to have to watch that game to see where they actually finish. And the worst part about that game is that it's at 6 a.m. Pacific and 9 a.m. Eastern time, and for 3 of those 4 teams, they're going to have to tune into that at 6 in the morning. So for the Quakes, for their sake of not have to get to that scenario where they have to wait for the Chicago versus Vancouver game to determine where they're going to be finished in the standings, and for me to save some sleep and doesn't have to wake up that early to watch a Quakes game, all they need is to win against Chicago, and they should be able to top Group B with 7 points. Now, Chicago, they can of course move on into the round of 16 with a win against the San Jose Earthquakes. They could probably top Group B, but obviously that depending on Vancouver, and that if Vancouver beats Seattle, it can also determine what's going to happen in the very last game, where that game could really determine who actually could finish top spot, and that whether if Chicago is going to do it or Vancouver is going to do it. But either way, the scenario for the Quakes is pretty simple. All they need is a win or even a draw. Like, I think even a draw should be enough for them to move on into the next round of the round of 16, and I don't have to just wake up 6 in the morning to watch that Vancouver versus Chicago game to find out where they are going to finish in the standings. But moving on, in terms of the next game, is the Seattle Sounders versus the Vancouver Whitecaps, the other Group B matchup. Seattle, of course, lost 2-1 against Chicago, while Vancouver lost 4-3 against the San Jose Earthquakes. This game kicks off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Now, for the Sounders, it's an absolute must-win for them. Like, if they do not win against the Vancouver Whitecaps, they're pretty much eliminated from this tournament. If they draw against the Vancouver Whitecaps, they probably are also eliminated from this tournament, because I don't think 2 points is going to be enough to be one of those best third place team in this tournament. So yeah, they have to win this game if they want to have a shot to potentially moving on into the next round. Now, for Vancouver's situation, it can get a little bit tricky. If they can get a win in this game, it would put them in a very good spot of potentially moving on into the next round when they face against Chicago in the very next match. But if they lose this game, then it can get them in a very tough situation where they're going to have to pray to be one of those best third place team, and that they're going to be in a spot where a lot of these team heading into match day 3 that currently have 0 points are in right now, where they got to win that last game if they want to have a shot to be one of those best third place team to move on into the round of 16. And also, I didn't write the scenario that Vancouver is going to be in, because their scenario is a little bit tricky, and I would have taken up more than the amount of blank space that I have remain in this box to kind of write the scenario that Vancouver could be in for themselves. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this game is. And for the Sounders, as I said, it's a must-win for them. And that big three for the Sounders in Ruidíaz, Morris, and Lidero, they need to show up in this game. So far, all three of those guys have 0 goals in this tournament. And unless if those guys are not going to be show up against a Whitecaps team that clearly looked vulnerable in that game against the Quakes, and that if it wasn't for the Quakes giving up those 2 very cheap goals to the Whitecaps, that game should have been 4-1 in favor of the Quakes, and that the Whitecaps also concede a lead record 23 corners in the last game. So you would think, with how bad that defense was for the Whitecaps in the last game, that Seattle clearly need to capitalize on this, and that not only they want to win this game, but they want to win it in a bigger margin, so that if they're in a scenario where they're going to be sitting on the same amount of points that the Quakes are in, if the Quakes of course lose to the Chicago Fire, they will have the upper edge over the San Jose Earthquakes because of goal differential. But yeah, moving on in terms of the next match. Now moving into Group A, and looking at the next 2 game, which is from Group A, is Miami versus NYCFC. So this game is going to be kicking off at 9 a.m. Eastern Time and 6 a.m. Pacific Time. Inter Miami, of course, lost 2-1 against Philly, while NYCFC lost 3-1 against Orlando, and that both of these teams are fighting this scenario where they have to win if they want to have a shot in terms of being one of the best third-place team, and that if this game does end in a draw for both of these teams, yeah, both of these teams are going to be eliminated. And that when you look at this matchup, I kind of find it hard to see who potentially could get a win in this game, because both of these teams have not looked very good so far in this tournament. NYCFC, their struggle that they had in the first 2 games continue in this tournament, with only scoring 1 goal in this game, and now knowing the fact that Maxi Morales is not going to be in the starting 11 against Inter Miami. Yeah, that is a huge blow in terms of the attack that have already struggled when they have Maxi Morales in that starting 11. And for Inter Miami, it's simple. They just don't have a goal scored on that team, and they don't have a striker on that team that is not named Rodolfo Pizarro to be the one that scored the goal. Well, actually, technically, there was another guy that scored a goal that's not named Rodolfo Pizarro, and that is Agudelo that scored on the opening night. Almost forgot about that. But still, Miami, they are a team that is definitely struggle in terms of scoring goals, and if they want to be one of those best third place team and want to win this game, they have to score goals in this game. And that this is also the other thing I want to say about this one, where yes, both of these teams needs to win in order to have a shot to be one of the best third place team. But if you're going to win this game, you got to make sure it's got to be either a blowout or you score a lot of goals in this game, because goal differential, as we said before, is the first tiebreaker in terms of figuring out who is going to be moving on into the next round, depending on if the points are tied. And right now, both Miami and NYCFC do not have a very good goal differential. Miami has a -2 goal differential heading into this game, while NYCFC currently have a -3 goal differential heading into this one. So both of these teams, they want to win this game. They got to make sure they win it big, or else, even with the 3 points that they got, they might not have enough to move on into the next round and be one of the best third place team, just because of how bad their goal differential is. But yeah, moving on in terms of the other Group A matchup. And this matchup is really a matchup that determined who actually finished top of the group, between the Philadelphia Union versus Orlando City, which kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The reason why I say that this determined who finished at the top of the group is both of these teams are sitting at 6 points on top of Group A, and that the winner of this game is going to be able to win the group, and that Orlando, if they can get a draw against Philly in this game, they'll also top the group, because they technically have a better goal differential than the Union actually have right now. Speaking of the Union, they of course won 2-1 against Miami in the last game, while Orlando won 3-1 against NYCFC. And, right now, Orlando City have looked very impressive so far in this tournament. And I know some people will say, well, maybe it's because they have home field advantage. Keep in mind, this is not the same field and the same stadium that they actually play their MLS game. I mean, it used to be, but it's not the same one that they used to play. And yes, obviously they get the advantage of the fact that they're probably more well adapt to this climate, and this is probably one of the things I said in the beginning where I thought Orlando is going to have some advantage in terms of this and knowing the climate that they're playing in right now. But still, this has been a very impressive tournament for Orlando City, and they have played some of the best soccer I've seen Orlando City play ever since they came into the league in 2015. And now they're playing against a Union team that, I think this is going to be even a bigger test than they have against NYCFC, and a Union team that also looked very decent so far in these first two games in the tournament. This could be a very interesting kind of matchup, in that I won't be surprised both of these teams could be finding themselves going deep into the tournament just because of how well they have done so far in these first two games of the tournament. But yeah, moving on, in terms of the next match, is Toronto FC versus New England Revolution. This game is from Group C, and this game actually kicks off at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time. Toronto, of course, won that crazy 4-3 game against not New England, but actually the Montreal Impact in the Canadian Classique. Stanley made a mistake there. There we go. Against Montreal. Well, New England, of course, drew 1-1 against DC United, and that was a very frustrating draw, and probably almost felt like a loss for the Revs, consider they dominate throughout the game, and that one goal that they concede against DC was mainly because of their defensive lapse that allowed DC to score that goal and ultimately stole a point in that game. Whoever, of course, will top this group, because both of these teams are sitting at a top of, both of these teams are currently in the top two of Group C with four points, so whoever wins this game is going to top the group. Now, a draw in this game could help TFC chances to top the group, because they actually have a better goal differential than what New England has, but that also depends on what happened in the DC versus Montreal game, and that if DC is able to beat the Impact by a 2-goal margin, then all of a sudden DC United will actually top the group. And who would have thought that DC United in these first two games, who has by far been the luckiest team in this group, like how in the world did they were able to steal a point against New England that they just got completely outplayed, and that in some way, as I said, that goal that they got was an absolute gift from New England in the last game. And then against TFC, down 10 men, and yet somehow in some way they were able to come back and stole points in that game. They have been very, very fortunate so far in this tournament. So if they can, of course, beat the Montreal Impact, I wouldn't say, depending on how they beat the Impact, if they are able to convincingly beat them, I wouldn't say that they were very lucky to find the top spot, but I won't blame if people say that they got very lucky to be finding themselves in the top spot, consider they got gifted their first two games because of some bad defensive mistake by the team that they faced. But yeah, it's kind of a crazy scenario that DC could still actually top this group, and that there could be even a crazier scenario where if this game ends in a draw, and that we could actually see 3 teams in Group C that actually have 5 points, and that I think that's, even though as incredible as that is, I have a feeling the third place team is still going to be moving on into the next round, and that they'll probably be the best third place team out of this tournament, because I think, I haven't really done the calculation in terms of looking at other groups, but I'm pretty sure that all the other group, if you want to get third place, there is no way you can actually possibly get five points in that group and still finish third place, except the group that I've just mentioned in Group C, where we could see a situation where the third place team unfortunately will have to finish third, even though they have 5 points, which most of the time usually get you in the top 2 of the group. So yeah, this is going to be kind of interesting to see how it is, and I can't wait to see how TFC attack is going to look. So far, their attack, besides Columbus, have looked very explosive, and you can thank Ayo Akinyola, who has been probably the most surprising emergence in this tournament by scoring 5 goals, and who would have thought that he would be the one that tops the Golden Boot up to that point. Like, a lot of people probably have not even heard of him heading back or prior to this tournament, but the fact that he scored a brace against DC and then the hat trick in the Canadian Classique, all his stock of potentially being one of the most promising player and on the verge of potentially being in the U.S. men's national team, even though technically you still kind of have to choose whether or not if you want to represent the U.S., Canada, or even Nigeria, which his family is from, is going to be seen. But yeah, I can't wait to see how that kid is going to play in this game, and is he going to continue to score goals like he has been, because his confidence must be in cloud 9 right now with the way that he has performed in the first 2 games. But now moving on into the last match of the preview for part number 1 is Atlanta United versus the Columbus Crew, and this game kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, and this one is from Group F. Atlanta, of course, lost, well, actually not Group F, Group E, that is. Atlanta, of course, lost 1-0 to FC Cincinnati. It was a very embarrassing loss that they suffer against a Cincinnati team that looked like they were down and out against Columbus in the first game. While Columbus, they, of course, won 2-0 against the Red Bulls, and I think out of every single team heading into this last match day, Columbus is probably the only team that really don't have anything to play for heading into this group. I mean, right now, they pretty much not only have moved on into the next round, but they pretty much have topped the group. Like, the second place team, which is the Red Bulls, even though they are only 3 points behind Columbus. If you look at the goal differential, Columbus by far has a much better goal differential than the Red Bulls had. And if Columbus lose by a big amount to Atlanta in this game, or somehow in some way the Red Bulls can do something that Columbus did to FC Cincinnati, and that is completely well up that Cincinnati defense. Again, I just don't see how Columbus cannot finish top of this group, and that it will be also kind of interesting to see if Caleb Porter decided to arrest some of his guys, knowing the fact that there's really nothing to play in this game for his group, and that you want to, of course, rest up some of your players so that they will be fresh heading into the knockout stage of this tournament. Now, for Atlanta, they have everything to play in this game. They got to win in this game and hope to be one of the best third-place team in this tournament. And, my odds of them to potentially be one of their best third-place team might not be very good because, even if Columbus might feel a very weak team, I still don't know if Atlanta can, of course, win this game. Like, heading into this tournament, I did say that the only reason why I can see Atlanta potentially do well in this tournament is that if Ezekiel Barco and Pity Martinez can show up in this tournament. Well, guess what? We're 2 games into this tournament, and both of those guys have been just almost invincible in this tournament. And when they don't do very, very well and carry some of the slack that Joseph Martinez have carried with this team, it's no wonder why Atlanta is being fully exposed as a team that isn't actually very good, and it feels like they're just being carried by one man in this team, and one man only, that is Joseph Martinez. So, yeah, for Atlanta, they need to prove me wrong if that is the case. If they want to win against a Crew team that might not feel their strongest team heading into this next round or heading into this game, but they definitely need to win this game if they have any chance to move on to the next round. Like, if they lose this game, they are eliminated from this tournament. If they draw in this game, they also will be eliminated from this tournament. So, yeah, it's really just an absolute must-win for Atlanta if they want to move on to, if they want to even have a chance to be one of those best third-place teams to move on into the round of 16. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the prediction video of these first 6 games from Matchday number 3 of the MLSisback tournament. Tomorrow I'll look at the last 7 games of this MLSisback tournament to see how each of those teams can move on into the round of 16. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games and also the prediction for all 6 of these games. And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.